could you please give the audience maybe a quick bio, and then we can start into the conversation of the crystal skulls?
Really quick, I'm the director of the Crystal Awareness Institute. Began in 1975 working with crystals and energy and healing. I have been doing so now for over 30 years, and I've traveled in 14 different countries teaching different energy healing techniques that I've developed. And a side effect is I've been researching in ancient crystal skulls since 1985.
85, wow.
That's quite
wow. Yes, it is. I didn't even know that the crystal skulls existed maybe 5 years ago. So that's a long time researching this. On that note, basically, what got you into the skulls originally, and what was the main reason for you to dedicate, a lot of your time to this?
Pure curiosity. First, answer the first question is that my teacher, Nick Nocerino, was the one who had the massive interest in crystal skulls since he was a child, and he got me interested after he brought in a skull called a Mayan skull, and I was not able to go to it, but he showed me some pictures, and I was intrigued. And then we had an opportunity to set up a team to go to Canada to Anna Mitchell Hedges' home and study the Mitchell Hedges skull, and that I did in 1985, and both he and I returned in 86 and 87 to do separate research processes.
Wow. So for people that don't know, we would have to say Nick Nocerino is probably the top guy in this field, correct?
I would consider him to be the foremost crystal skull researcher, not only in time, but in his ability to actually help develop the codes that could actually access the skulls and get information in the form of pictures and other sensory data to come out of the skulls, like accessing graphics in a computer.
Oh, wow. So where exactly was the first skull found? How was that found, by accident, or?
Well, the Mitchell Hedges skull may not be the first skull, but it is the most famous skull of all, and it was found in Belize in the early 1920s by Anna Mitchell Hedges on an archaeological dig site.
So was it in ruins, or was it just in the ground?
Yeah, it was a Mayan temple site. There was several acres in size, and this was undertaken. It was a series of temple ruins that was being investigated by Dr. Frank Mitchell Hedges, her father.
Huh. How many skulls have been found up to this date? I guess you could say how many authentic skulls, because I'm sure that there's replicas have been made.
Well, I have, for some time, together with Nick, we decided to break the skulls down into different categories. The first one would be modern skulls, and that would be skulls that have been carved in this modern time, in the past, let's say, 30 or 40 years. Then there are older skulls which are up to 1,000 years old, and there are ancient skulls which are many thousands of years old.
Yeah, the Mitchell Hedges skull, how old is that one?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. In the first place, let's make something very clear. Scientifically, we cannot date quartz.
Yeah.
Because
and all these are made of some form of quartz, because you have to have carbon-14 to count the radioactivity decay rate in it, and there is no carbon in quartz.
There's basically no organic form within this crystal is what it is.
None. And
amazing.
So the only way that we have been able to come up with anything as an idea is to go to various different psychics and intuitives and ask them the same question without telling them the answer somebody else gave us. And then we use if we get 3 or 4 people saying the same thing, there's a pretty good chance that might be it. And in all cases, I don't guess it really matters how old a skull is. What counts is what can it do.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
That was actually going to be my next question. You said something about what can be read from the skulls?
We were able, starting with the Mitchell Hedges skull, and since that time I have 2 other skulls that have done the same thing. We've been able to activate the skull to the point where images have appeared that were strong enough that we could actually photograph them.
Huh.
So essentially, we are basically talking about a crystal skull as we know, or not a crystal skull, but like what the mystics use as a crystal ball, where they're able to see into this crystal.
Except that what you're describing is a process called crystal gazing or scrying, in which an individual clairvoyantly sees visions which are actually in his head but are projected by his eyes into the shiny surface. But that's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about actually photographing the quartz skull itself, the images that are in there that were so visible we could actually photograph them.
Oh, my God.
So it's almost like a EVP, but with the photography.
Well, exactly. What you're really looking at is something that must be similar to an ancient way of producing something like a computer storage unit. Because we're getting the Mitchell Hedges skull was one of the first ones that we were able to do this, and that was dramatic in that here's a piece of quartz that's almost totally clear. In fact, it was so clear that it had been put into a bucket of water, it would just simply disappear because there's nothing internal you could see.
And that's
from that,
unusual
we were able
for quartz, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because that's a very high quality, what is called optical quartz. And it's a beautiful skull, by the way. But what we were able to do through various different methods, we were able to activate the skull so that pictures appeared that weren't there before and were not able to account for by any other method other than the fact that we simply photographed them.
Huh.
Well, we have a question in the chat room from Kathy. She says, I know this might sound like a silly question, but with all he has learned from the skulls, has he found out... Oh, let me see. I got to scroll this. Can you see that better, Melchizedek? Because I can't actually scroll right now. Her question on the chat.
I can't see the last word. I think it says what the skull was chosen for the icon of the carvings.
Okay, there we go.
The icon of what?
Of the carvings. I'm not quite exactly sure what she's trying to say there.
I'm not sure. In fact, let's ask her to go back to the chat room and say this again in a little more clear way, because I'm not quite sure what she means about the carvings.
Well, this brings me to an interesting point here. When you talk about there's information or images on this, like in the Stargate shows and stuff like that, their computers are controlled by what looks like motherboards that are like crystal or something. So do you think maybe this was used in some kind of ancient computer or extraterrestrial computer, or it may have more information than just images?
I think, quite frankly, that these were used as record keepers.
Strictly.
More than, I believe we are pretty sure that these things even today can tap into your memory banks and record every memory of everything that's ever happened in your whole life.
Almost like cellular memory, almost?
Almost like cellular memory. In fact, if you consider that if it does store images on bands of light, and we're pretty sure that it does, then the capacity is infinite because it's 3D.
And Thea writes, why is it a skull question she's asking, perhaps? Maybe it's the fact that the
why did they carve it in the shape of a skull?
Yeah, but she's basically asking why did they choose the skull rather than a tree or a monkey, etc.?
Well, in the ancient times, the skull was recognized as being a residence of knowledge from the individual who thought within it. In fact, even today, the Tibetans, when they have a very great Rinpoche, which is like a cardinal, very honored, ancient, sacred, holy man, when he died, they would take his skull and they would cleanse it and ritually work with it, even put gold around it. and use it with a special liquid. His leading assistant or apprentice would drink from it with the idea that his information was stored in the brain, was also in the crystalline structure of the bones of the skull, and that this information then could be transferred back into the liquid and then taken in by the individual.
I have done some research on that before.
Amazing. Well, Dale, we actually have a lot of questions for you. We're going to try to just shoot them out and basically give us your best answer. It doesn't matter how long it'll take, just because the listeners, they definitely want to hear the details and they tune in. So what was your question now?
I have kind of a comment right quick. Wasn't it Edgar Casey that said something about something will be found about information or regarding Atlantis or something like that? And you say these skulls hold information and images, right?
Yes.
Could that
Edgar
connection
Casey said
kind of be made?
That from Atlantis that they kept records, what they call in an area they call the Hall of Records, and that these would be, well, they would be records of Atlantis.
Okay.
The Akashic records, bear in mind, the Akashic records are the full-time, real-time record of everything you do in a whole life.
It's like the conscious record or something like that, right?
It's definitely a record that can be tapped into. There are Akashic readers that do that, but from what I remember of the Casey material, and I actually went to Virginia City to the Casey Museum and the library, and I studied some of the things there. But what he said was that in Atlantis, when they knew that the destruction was on its way, then they made copies of the records of the most important of the information from the scientific studies of Atlantis, which happened maybe, 50,000 years of research. They must have been an incredibly high level of technology. At any rate, they want to store them in something, and I can't think of anything that would be better than storing it in quartz, because, number one, it will do that. You can store massive amounts, and if you knew how to put it into three-dimensional capability, then you could store a library of the whole universes of all the universities of the United States and maybe the rest of the world in a couple of crystals.
And
well, the show is what was that, Mel?
I said, you know what else is kind of strange?
Yes.
Quartz crystal can be used for radio. Perhaps maybe there's a frequency, much like what our internet or what our satellite that maybe there's a whole transmit of information out there.
Well, it gets even a little more intricate when you start to think about it, because one of the frequencies that they work on is telepathic or thoughts. I am very much convinced that all of the ancient skulls, or at least most of the ancient skulls, are connected to each other, because I have found pictures of other skulls inside the ones I photographed.
Oh, man.
I believe that there's a network.
How are you actually, what's the best way to put this, visualizing this through the skull? Is it a 3D or a fourth-dimensional type visual?
Well, you can't really visualize a 4 dimension. Do you think about that? But you can visualize 3. And these look like images that would be stored on anything, or anything you take a photograph of. But bearing in mind that it's in a rounded surface, sometimes the dimensions are a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
But you can definitely see faces, for instance. What I look for when I'm looking for faces is 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. If I can see that, suddenly I can see it. And here's the interesting thing about it. These things follow the old rules that used to be you don't give anything away totally. You hide it and see if you can find out or figure out how to make it come out again. These images are not 3D holographic instant pictures that you can just pluck out. You have to work at it. You have to put special energy, special prayers, meditation. I use light and color, for instance. I shoot a lot of pictures of the skull sitting on a light box with color gel so that the color goes all the way through the skull. And every time I do that,
prism?
the color, and the skull changes. The images inside change with colors.
I wonder if it would change with frequency of tone. If
yes,
you apply
indeed they do.
Musical frequency or vibrations, different vibrations with different colors of light, maybe. So,
Dr. Stephen Halpern, the musician, New Age musician, composer, worked on the first skull that came to the United States, and that was called the Mayan skull. That was the one that I did not work on, but was able to see pictures of. And he used, has a very good collection of ancient Peruvian whistles, more like an ocarina with different holes on it for making sounds.
Yeah.
And he was able to make some effects or energy changes in the Mayan skull as a result of using those whistles. So I know that the sound does make a difference, and I've used sound on them.
So the obvious question would be, how could one or the other, anybody, tap into this information? I'm sure it takes a lot of research and delving in deeper than just buying a skull and thinking you could see the future, basically.
Well, in the first place, all I'd say is good luck if you're going to buy an ancient skull.
Exactly.
You're better off finding a needle in a haystack. Huh?
I'm not saying that they're not available. I am saying they're quite expensive.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking money talks. Money always talks. So I'm sure some rich person can go out and purchase one if they really wanted to. But
that's undoubtedly true. I'm just saying it would have to be somebody really rich to do it. I was able to, through a series of circumstances, get mine without it costing me a great deal of money. That
was actually my next question. Could you please delve into the first skull that you came across, and was that an ancient skull?
It is an ancient skull, and the name is Rainbow, maybe because of all the rainbow colors that are inside it. But that skull came to me as a result of a class I was teaching, which a gentleman came in, one of my students, and he wanted to buy an object that I manufacture and sell called the Wheel of Life. It's a pendant with a great deal of energy which is used for healing and personal protection. And he wanted to buy a gold one. Well, you know, gold is not cheap. And he didn't have the money completely for it, but he offered me to pay me half in cash and half in trade. And I thought, trade? Well, that's intriguing. What is it you have? And he had some artifacts left to him by his grandfather that grandfather received them back in 1920s, I think it was. And one of the artifacts, the artifacts were some carvings, like bowls with special carvings on the outside of them. Very pretty. But one of the carvings was this particular skull, I call Rainbow. And the moment I touched it, I knew exactly what it was because it had the same vibrational feeling that the Mitchell Hedges skull had.
Huh. So it's almost, I think it's pretty interesting that the skull kind of found its way to you.
Well, it got even more so than that because another skull came to me as a result of an individual who contacted me, had a private collection, and her husband had died, and she had a lot of stones. One of the stones into it was a crystal skull. And here again, the moment I was able to touch it, I knew what it was. So I purchased that and was very fortunate that I got it at a reasonable price because I'm not a rich man.
Yeah.
But it gets even more intricate because the third skull that I have came to me through an individual who called me up and he said, I understand that you work with crystal skulls and you actually have a skull. Could I come by and see it? Now, I don't normally do that. So anybody out there thinking they're going to call me up and come over and visit my skulls, it's not going to happen.
Yes.
I do very much. I separate my private home from my business home.
Yes, and, you must do that.
I don't do that. But in this case, I just asked internally to my spiritual guides and said, should I do this? And they said yes. So I invited him to come over. Came over, and he's a very nice-looking guy, maybe in his middle 30s, dressed nicely, and introduced himself, which I can't remember his name. And he said, you have a skull. And I showed him Rainbow, and he held it, and he meditated with it for 15, 20 minutes, He asked me some very interesting questions, which told me he knew a lot about skulls, because he wouldn't have known to ask the questions. And then he said, excuse me, I have something out in the car I need to bring and show you. So he went out and he came back and had a bag, and he reached in the bag and he pulled out another skull.
Oh, wow.
Now, this particular skull is really unusual in that it's a hollow skull rather than a solid one. Now, if you think carving a solid skull is difficult, imagine carving the interior of it in such a way that you don't break the skull. It's almost impossible to do it.
That's amazing how it actually is carved and polished like it is.
But this particular skull is very unusual in that, well, I don't know how to say it except that it's a skull of an alien.
Huh. Do you have pictures of it, or do you actually
Yes, I do have pictures of it. I'll tell you what. For the audience, let me throw this out to you.
Okay.
I will send you a picture of Zar, the alien skull, if you email me at my email, DaleWalker@AOL.com. That's DAEL Walker @AOL.com.
Okay, we have a lot of people in the chat. Yeah, you have a lot of people in the chat room right now, so they're really fascinated right now.
They will email me. Bear in mind, I'm going to email back an attached photo of the skull, and I guarantee you, when you look at it, you will say, "Whoa, this is not humanoid," but it's not human in about 9 different ways.
Make sure you send that to me, Dale, since you already have my email.
I will. But
Thank you,
the bottom line is, to finish the story.
Yes.
I'm standing there with this thing, and my jaw is bouncing off the floor. I've never seen anything like it in my whole life. And he says, the skull said that it will stay with you until it's time to leave. I looked at him, and I said, "You're telling me that you're giving me the skull?" He says, "No, the skull is coming to you. It told us to bring it to you, and it will stay with you until it's time to leave." And then he said to me, "I'm sorry, but I really have to go. I have a lot of things to do yet, but I'm really happy to meet you, and good luck with the skull." He turned to leave, and I had something, every once in a while, having worked with quartz and doing healing for all these years, I have developed a certain amount of sensitivity and intuitiveness. And I got an impression, and I turned to him and I said, "You're from the Brotherhood, aren't you?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "The White Brotherhood?" He said, "That's correct." And so I simply said to him, "Well, please give my respects to your elders, members of your council."
So that would also be considered the Brotherhood of Melchizedek too, correct?
They're all linked together.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, I also got to keep in mind it's like the yin yang. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones. There's
of course.
That want to deceive, and there's some that want
to. Well, the knowledge we know of Melchizedek here is strictly positive, so we don't attach ourselves to the negatives here.
Yes.
Well, I'm talking about the White Brotherhood, which is not the Brotherhood of Melchizedek, but it's connected to them. All the spiritual brotherhoods are connected.
We have a caller for you, Dale. Let's see who's on the line. Caller, where are you calling from, and what's your name? Caller, you're on air.
Hello.
I hear a little. Can you speak up a little louder?
Why don't you simply take the question and repeat it to me?
Okay. I hear him crackling in and out, but you'll have to call back, caller. Please call back and try to get on a better phone or something that isn't so low, because we can barely hear you. So please call back. Okay, what were we getting into?
Let me make a suggestion to people that are in your chat room or online so they can listen to me. There will be a documentary called The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls that's on the Sci-Fi Channel in about...
right after the show, actually.
Yes, at 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time.
Yes,
and
we have everything listed on the site right now, so everybody on the chat, they can see the information above.
As soon as they get off the show to turn on the sci-fi channel,
exactly.
It's going to be a very interesting, and they will see me there with some of my skulls.
Well, that's how I was promoting the show, actually, Dale. I was promoting it basically as the premiere before the Sci-Fi Channel premiere of the documentary. So it's all listed on the page right now. So everybody is going to definitely be tuning in right after the show. And yeah, we're getting a lot of callers here, but it seems like they're Skype numbers, and for some reason the Skype isn't coming in right now. So try calling back in, callers. Well, let's get back into what we were talking about. Where do we leave off on before we were?
Well, we just received this ancient skull that's named itself Czar. By the way, in my world, the skulls name themselves. We started off by calling the Mitchell Hedges skull the Mitchell Hedges skull. We called the Mayan skull the Mayan skull, but every skull after that is called itself. I was going to name the rainbow, maybe call it, my ego said, well, maybe I'll just call it the Walker skull. And yeah, stroked me really good. And I got this voice inside my head that said, my name is Rainbow. And I thought,
wow.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And it was definitely female.
Wow, that's amazing.
These skulls that are carved, is there like a certain size? Because I have done a lot of research actually into skulls, and
yes, actually,
different sizes. But
on that question,
like
Dale,
correct dimensions for a human
skull? On that question, Dale, is your skull one of the actual size skulls?
Well, it depends on which skull you're talking about.
Because I'm basically referring out of the 13 that was talked about. The 13 originals.
Let me demystify something, if you won't mind.
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead.
About the 13 skulls. Back in 1980, just after Nick Nocerino had worked with the Mayan skull, he was talking about how he first got into skulls when he was 7 years old, and he had a dream of a crystal skull that had a serpent coming out of one part and an eagle flying out the other. That was his first experience. Then, after the Mayan skull, he had another dream in which he saw 13 skulls, one in the center and 12 in a circle. The one in the center would be called a master skull, and that they would come together for some special purpose, which was not named. Immediately after he said that over national television, it came out about a year later. It came out in a lady's book, who was a part Native American, and where she said it was a Native American prophecy or story that there would be 13 skulls. Prior to that time, nobody had mentioned crystal skulls at all, except for the Mitchell Hedges skull. Now we're having somebody else saying it. Then it came out in somebody else's book about 13 skulls, and even this, even the documentary's talking about the 13 Mayan skulls.
Yes.
But then, as far as I know, they are not Mayan skulls. They are world skulls.
All around the world.
Yeah, but
I heard of Anna Mitchell Hedges also referring to these 13 ancient ones.
No, she did not.
Is there only 13?
So it wasn't Anna.
7.
That was a myth. That was not Anna that did it. I know
okay,
that was. I knew Anna very well.
Okay.
Now, it really doesn't matter. The myth is out there, and it's going to stay forever about the 13 skulls. And this documentary uses that myth to give a little drama to the whole mystery of the skulls themselves. And the documentary is done just very well. You're going to see that. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, just as a point of pure letting out the real truth about things.
Yeah.
It didn't begin as somebody else's tribal myth or story. It came from Mr. Nocerino.
Wow. So the 13 skulls is definitely just a myth then.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it isn't true, because he was pretty clear that this is something it would be. But the question comes, which one of all the maybe 50 skulls that are out there is the 13 skulls?
Yes.
See, I've got the
let's see if we can get this caller again. Caller, you're on the air. Can you speak up this time?
All right, let's see. Did it work this time? Hello?
Yes, there you go. Yes, we can hear you. What's your name and where you're calling from?
Oh, I'm calling from, my name is Keith. I'm calling from New York. I'm pretty much just calling in to, first time on Blog Talk Radio. Heard you guys talking. It sounded pretty interesting. I figured I'd
okay, great having you on. Great having you on. Do you have any questions for Dale on the subject of the crystal skulls and all this stuff you're seeing on the TV right now with the Indiana Jones and the Sci-Fi Channel documentary right after the show?
Well, as far as like the, I don't know, there was one of the beliefs that I've gone through when I was younger, was that the actual crystals had like a built-in energy, or it was almost like they were able to channel energy from around it. And
well, can I answer that one really quick?
Yes,
what's that?
Go ahead.
Is that the question, or is that the comment? Do crystals have that power?
Yeah, I was wondering if like they were used to focus energy from the tribes that they were with.
Well, that's the shamans that I know, and I know a lot of them because I'm an elder in the Spirit Horse Medicine Society. The shamans that I know love to have a piece of quartz because it does enable their mind to go into what they call the shadow world and speak to spirits and speak to animals and speak to plants and in other words, communicate telepathically. And that's my experience too.
Yeah, but wasn't the quartz supposed to be in like its natural form, where it had the triangle the natural triangle window up at the top peak? That would allow for some strange reason when I always saw the Indiana Jones pieces, and that the fact that they were saying, oh, it's a quartz stone, and it was polished, it was like, wait, doesn't that take away from the natural?
A quartz is a quartz regardless if it's polished.
You mean, is there any major difference between a polished quartz and a natural, just out of the earth quartz? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, true.
The answer to that is no. I've been working with quartz for over 30 years, and I can tell you, any measurement I make with curling camera photography, with dowsing rods, with pendulum, with any other method of testing energy, I cannot tell the difference between a polished quartz and a natural quartz of any kind. I can tell the difference between quartz from one area and another. One will have more energy than the other, but it has nothing to do with being polished.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, caller. Please call in anytime. Right, thank you for the call.
All right. Have a great night.
We really appreciate it. Thank you, caller.
I do have a question here. Somebody actually brought that to my attention in the chat room, and since you know so much about skulls, here recently, maybe about 6 months ago, I stumbled onto some stuff, and I tried to do some research, but the research only took me so far. Have you ever heard of the Lemurian seed crystals?
Starseed crystals.
Oh, Lemurian seed crystals. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sure. That was something that was created by Katrina Raphael. The lady is very knowledgeable in the sense of she has a very great capability of naming crystals. Lemurian seed crystals were supposed to be found underwater. There's all kinds of stories about it. What I have not found is how the information about Lemurian seed crystals, how you can verify it.
Yes.
Did you get information from Lemuria? Was it
exactly
channeled information? Well, I don't know. All I know is that she has a real talent, an excellent talent for naming things.
Well, the research that I stumbled onto is actually going through websites. I didn't find any of it in books or anything. I was searching for something else, and the research pointed to the fact that when I was reading, is the fact that there was information on these crystals too that were received basically almost the same way that you're talking about. The information was coming from the crystal skulls. And that's how they determined the Lemurian status or whatnot. But I was just wondering your opinion, since you know so much about it.
Well, that's entirely possible that because crystals are certainly capable of holding information. Yes. I can program a crystal and put information into it that will cause your body to react to it. I do that all the time in terms of healing. But the key here is there some research done, the gathering the information done on a regulated basis, or is just somebody's information from their spiritual guides? That's the question.
Yeah, well,
all of my research on crystals has come over a period of over 30 years of interacting with literally thousands of students in 14 different countries.
Wow.
Well, I was just wondering on your opinion on them. That's all I was wondering, because my research...
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a real opinion other than the fact that I would like to see some pretty good information that it would be a way of verifying it. And I don't know if that's available. I do know that there's been talk about recorder crystals. In fact, Katrina Raphael also came up with that title, and I asked her personally one time what information she had found recorded, and she said she has no information from recorder crystals, and the name for recorder crystals came from her higher self. So I got at that point, I didn't have any more questions because I don't know how to question the higher self.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, this is her information. Certainly may be valid, but I have no way of knowing it. And I'm like an engineer, you know. I like to verify things. I like to test them. I like to come back and see, do they do something?
Exactly. Well, that's the only way to really do it. You have to really dig into the research. You can't just dust at the surface, correct?
Correct. At least that's my way, anyway.
Yeah. So, to get back to I would like to get back to the question of how can we access this information. Say if one was to really dedicate their life like you have, how did you come about accessing the information? Is there a specific chant or ritual you might have to do?
Well, I was fortunate in that I was a student, and it's kind of like an apprentice to Nick Nocerino, who I consider to be probably the foremost crystal master on the earth.
Yes.
And I was able to bounce things off of him and work with him so that he showed me. I can just tell you that each skull is different. The formula that would work for the Mitchell-Hedges skull doesn't necessarily work for Rainbow. But they're similar in that you're going to need to use the sensory data, light, color, sound, and touch. You need to have meditation. You need to have prayer. You need to be able to connect with spiritual guides and teachers. If you can do any of those things, then you can work with a skull and get information. And maybe you can just get it just by touching it. I know people who are just psychically tuned enough that they get information without having to go through any of these ways that I do.
So you would say that the more spiritually endowed the person is, basically the easier it would be to tap into them.
Absolutely.
Great.
Does
great.
Maybe the time of day or the way the sun is setting, that might also have?
No, it really has a lot to do with how you hold your tongue in your cheek.
Tongue in your cheek. Huh?
Yeah, that's an old joke. It's tongue in cheek.
Oh, yes. I caught that, but it went over my head.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but pull your chain there a little bit. Listen,
that was great, actually. That was great.
Getting into a meditative state, because if you're going to communicate with a skull, you're not going to communicate with your mouth, nor with your ears.
Exactly.
You're going to communicate telepathically. Okay, and there are practices you can do, what is called exercising the astral talents or ability. One of them is psychometry, and the other is reading auras or aura reading. Any of these things will exercise your intuitive abilities. Taking classes in psychic awareness from somebody who actually is a psychic and practices it. I've often wondered how somebody can teach if they don't know how to do it themselves, but I see this all the time. I would suggest that as a way to start. And the next one is if you happen to be around a guy or a gal who happens to have an ancient skull, that really helps too.
Well, let me give a quick pitch for Dale. I actually purchased some recent skulls, some miniature ones from Dale. And as he stated, if you put them next to these ancient ones, could you please explain what transfers in basically the listeners what actually occurs.
Yes, several years ago I was working with carved skulls, modern ones, and wondering what the difference is between that and the ancient skulls. There's quite a tremendous difference. One of the biggest differences is the energy that you can dowse off of it. I use a professional dowsing rod, and I can dowse a regular skull as having an energy field of about 4 to 8 feet.
Wow.
If I dowse the energy field of an ancient skull, I may be talking 500 to 1,000 feet.
Oh my God.
Okay. Now what
so
I found
is this even after charging the skulls? Will they extend in any way?
No. Let me finish this. What I did is I got some smaller skulls, about 2 inches, 2.5 inches in diameter, and I had them in a bag that I carried my ancient crystal skull with, not thinking about that, just doing it, and when I got to my destination, I pulled them out, and it occurred to me, I wonder if there's any difference in the skull because of being next to the big one. And so I placed it and doused the energy field of it, and over a period of about 4 or 5 hours, the energy field now is over 80 feet.
Wow. Well, if you were to leave it, if you were to leave it any longer, you think it would still keep extending, or have you ever tested that?
The ones I have available, I keep next to an ancient skull, one or more ancient skulls, for a period of a month minimum.
Amazing! Wow.
Now,
yes, a month would do a lot of work, I would think. Yes.
People ask what you can do with them. One of the things you can do, number one, is you can place them on physical pain. There's a really good chance you'll reduce the physical pain. There's no guarantee, but this is what my experience is. Another one is you can simply hold it and meditate with it, and you'll probably end up getting an awful lot of interesting visions. And if you keep it under your pillow at night, boy, the dreams just go crazy.
So you would say it intensifies the meditation or our dream state?
Absolutely.
Wow. Amazing.
If people are interested in them, I have some available, and I will have more being made up. They run about, let's say, about 2 inches in diameter, and they're in clear or smoky or rose quartz, although it's a little more difficult to get the rose now. But they're available for $50 each. Plus
give them your address right quick. We'll also do that towards the end of the show. We'll give your full promotion towards the end of the show, but give them your URL right now so they can check that out.
My email address is daelwalker@aol.com, DAEL Walker@aol.com. My post number is P.O. Box 348, Sunol, SUNOL, California, 94586.
And what's your web address?
www.crystalawareness.com.
Okay, great. That's for all the listeners who are interested, and we have plenty of people in the chat room right now just chatting away on the crystal skull subject. But we wanted to get into these questions. Could you explain to the listeners who might not know the very first civilization who discovered these ancient crystal skulls?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. I'm convinced that the Lemurians, who existed about 200,000-300,000 years ago, were aware of the skulls. I was able to talk to a Hindu master who was very much aware of his Lemurian memories, and he was very much into crystals and the energy of crystals, and I'm quite convinced he knew about skulls. So they go all the way back to Lemuria, which was the mother planet, or the mother civilization to Atlantis.
And that's supposedly in modern-day Hawaii, correct?
Well, I was told by one of the priestesses in Hawaii that it's one of the last outposts of Lemuria. Yes. And then I found that same thing was verified by the Hindu master.
Great, because that's a big question that gets thrown around here. So you're definitely saying that they've been passed down all the way from the Lemurian time till now, then.
Now we're talking about a belief system here. I believe that's true. I have no proof that it's so.
Yes, we're taking everybody's perspective, so we definitely accept it.
There's also an interesting connection with UFOs.
Yes, could you get into that? I noticed you had that in your email. There's some kind of connection between the ancient skulls and the UFOs. Could you elaborate?
Photograph. I have one particular photograph, which I'll send you, that shows what looks like a dome-shaped craft of some type. Now, it's not so clear that you can say for absolutely sure that that's what it is. But by golly, it sure looks like it. It definitely looks like something that's not natural.
And is this crystal?
This is in one of my skulls, yes.
Wow. Wow. Well, we always ask this question on this show. Do you believe in extraterrestrials and the UFO field and the ufologists and people in that arena right now?
Well, let's go a little farther and tell you what I really believe.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do that.
I believe the skulls were created under the tutelage of extraterrestrials.
No, right.
Really?
Yep. I even had a vision when I was with the HEDGES skull in which I saw extraterrestrials beaming from the center of their head, pictures like a projector on the wall of a cave with people in animal skins watching it. And
so holographic, like beaming a holographic image. Wow. Oh my God.
I've had verification from several major psychics that these were brought in by quartz was brought either from mined from the U.S. or mined from other star systems, and brought to and manufactured by humans under the tutelage of the alien people.
Could you great? Could you describe these beings that you've seen?
Yeah, it was really interesting. The picture was, these people, I could not see arms. I saw them in a long robes that went down to the feet. I didn't even see the feet. I don't know what that looks like. But the top of it looked like large heads that were almost like skull faces, in that they were very tight skin against the face, and they were definitely not, they were humanoid faces, but not human.
Amazing.
Yeah, but this is my own stuff. You have to understand that all the stuff we're doing, we're working with psychic powers and abilities to get all this information. None of it is a scientific verification, and I don't even know how I could do that. I don't know of any scientist that could verify what I'm talking about.
We have about science anyway around here.
Exactly. We're very spiritual, and we believe in anybody's testimony that we can actually feel honesty from. And honestly, everybody listening right now pretty much believes, I'm sure, because this is the show for the paranormal, and we are definitely into that, and we believe. So it's definitely stuff we want to hear from people in your refined source of research and the stuff that you've been in. But as for the crystals, could you explain the different types of crystal that are basically mentioned within the ancient skulls? Because I know there's like amethyst and different types. Are there actually different types?
Mostly members of the quartz family, because of their energy abilities. All crystals have piezoelectric property to them that enables them to absorb energy, transfer energy, transform energy, broadcast energies. You can do all kinds of things with energy, because that's why we have our modern civilization. But the key here is that many other different types of materials have been used. I know a lady who has a skull made out of jade. I even know and have pictures of a jade skeleton that was created at one time. The whole body of a skeleton is made all out of jade.
Wow.
There are many different materials that can be done, but I would say probably the ones that would be the programmed crystals would be the ones that have the capability of electronic properties.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there's so many. I'm sure there's other technologies that can be created from this quartz. Have you ever came across any new technologies besides what we know of today, like the clocks and watches and stuff like that?
I have not found anything that wasn't of quartz that wasn't scientific at the moment. I personally have some interesting technology. One, in fact, that creates an object called a wheel of life. It's a pendant that's shaped like a wheel with 6 red stones and a green stone in the center, and it's specially activated and programmed in a method that's beyond today's normal science. So, yeah, I mean, in that respect, I've worked with and continue to work with technologies that are come off of my research with crystals.
Wow, amazing. Well, let's get into the healing properties of the crystals. I know you're definitely the one to talk to on this field. How is your practice with these crystals? How do you go about healing someone with the crystals?
When I first started working with crystals, I was given my inner teachers, my master guides and teachers who I talk with me all the time. They gave me these methods of using 2 quartz crystals, 1 in each hand. Since then I developed they helped me, I should say, develop the Wheel of Life, which now has the capacity of probably being 50 times stronger than a crystal. And because of that extra power, I can accelerate it. It's down to such simplicity that I can simply place the Wheel of Life in my left hand, the crystal in my right hand, place my left hand on physical pain, the right hand on the opposite side of the body, repeat a simple little prayer called the light invocation. I invoke the light of God within. I'm a clear and perfect channel. Light is my guide. And within 10 to 15 minutes, there will be a major reduction in physical pain. Period.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
Well, I do this in major conferences around the world. All I do is I bring people up who have physical pain, sit them in chairs. I ask for volunteers from the audience who've never done healing. I have them hold one of the wheel and the crystal, show them where to put their hands, have them repeat the light invocation, and 10, 15 minutes later, every single person in every chair has a major reduction in pain. It's that precise.
Yeah, very interesting.
Amazing. Wow.
You would think that the medical profession would actually learn something from this.
Exactly.
And actually research into it instead of trying to make money. Disclaimer.
Well, I've been fighting that battle for over 30 years, and it's getting better. There's much more now that's being acceptable. There is a National Health Science Institute that's now researching alternative methods, but it's very, very slow, and the only way you can get in to do it is you have to have a PhD or an MD, and it's very awkward, very difficult, and very expensive.
Well, what kills me is
a
shaman or a healer never had a PhD from my knowledge.
Yeah, and they don't get into hospitals very easy either.
Yeah, but they can heal people, and hospitals don't.
Yes, you can.
It's just my point of view, though. Sorry.
Well, let's be sure you understand my point of view. I don't want to get rid of doctors. What I want to do is make everything we do complementary with standard medicine, because when you have an emergency problem, nobody does it better than modern medicine.
Exactly.
If you're slipping over the edge and one leg is over, they can yank you back, whereas a healer probably can't. But in terms of long-distance healing, or long-term healing, I should say, then the healer is where he masters it, because he understands the nature of energy, and doctors really don't. They do understand the nature of pharmaceuticals and surgery, but that's about it.
Well, give the listeners a bit on how you do this broadcasting healing I heard you speaking of.
Oh, well, I've got several ways to do it. For instance, if I simply take the Wheel of Life and the crystal, which are my two major tools, and I place them in my hands, and give me the photograph of somebody so that I have their basic vibration on it, then I can, from there, I can broadcast directly to the individual, and I don't care where they are in the world.
And what do you actually need in order to do this? You said pictures. Is there any other?
Something that has their primary vibration onto it. Something that in dowsing is called primary witness. Basically, either a photograph, something they have personally written, or some part of their physical body, like nails or hair or a blood sample or something like that.
Something with their DNA in it?
Exactly. I need the vibration that's unique to every individual, and that's called the DNA.
I got you. It's almost like the processor for the computer there.
Well, if you're going to contact, it's more like the phone call we have right now. The only way I was able to talk to you is I had a code, which I used. I dialed some numbers, and when they connected together, you were able to answer on the other end of it. Okay, well, if I want to connect from me to you, and we're, 300 or 400 miles away, then I need to do that. Either I need to have some way of connecting my DNA energy field, your DNA energy field, so that telepathically I can broadcast that to you.
Yeah.
And it's really not difficult at all. It's rather simple, but it's very powerful. And then I even have methods of increasing that power even greater than just the wheel and the crystal.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's real interesting. I love the whole topic here that we're discussing.
Well, let's get into basically what we'll be seeing today after the show on this sci-fi documentary. Like, what are they really tackling on this documentary right here?
Well, they're going to tackle really the mystery of skulls. They'll tap into different skulls owned by different people. I don't know. I haven't seen the preview of it yet. Well, I have seen a preview, but I haven't seen the rough documentary. I was a consultant. I was hired by NBC to be a consultant for this documentary and to be a part of it. And so 3 of my skulls are there. Well, one that I have, Rainbow, one that belongs to my wife, she's a guardian, called Madre, and then, of course, our dear old friend Czar. All 3 of these are going to be in the documentary, along with the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Oh, yeah.
All together at the same place.
So who actually is in ownership of the Mitchell Hedges skull? Is it still...
A man by the name of Bill, Anna Mitchell Hedges, surviving her widower, her husband, Bill Homan is his name, Homann. He's a very nice young man. Young man. He's in probably his late 40s, but he's a nice guy, and he's very serious about taking a skull around, showing it around the world.
Wow. You wouldn't even think people would leave the house with these things, because I'm pretty sure you like to hold on to yours and not hand them to the wrong people. And that was a segue to the question I had, which was, are crystal skulls able to be negatively charged, or basically the energy zapped out of them by like the wrong person getting their hands on them maybe?
I don't think so. I'll tell you something. Nick Nocerino, whom I consider to be one of the best, foremost psychics and crystal researcher and master in the world, he could not make the skull do what he wanted it to do. He could not create something that the skull didn't want to do. That's what he told me.
So you're saying you could basically only abstract from it. You can't change the information.
It has its own intelligence. I don't know whether that's from a source internal or a source external, but something controls that skull, and it will do what it will do, and you can just blow a whistle and it won't make a bit of difference if it doesn't want to react to you.
Amazing. Wow. Well, we got another caller for you, Dale. Caller 303, where are you calling from and what's your name?
Hey, this is Jersey James. I'm calling from Jersey. What's up,
Oh,
Steven?
hey, how's it going? This is Jersey James from the greatest talk show that'll ever be. We are very happy to have you on. What's your questions for today? I'm sure you have plenty because James knows a lot about this stuff, the esoteric work. So,
my question really is, like, there's inherent powers in just crystals themselves. What about the crystal skulls make them more special than just powers that crystals themselves have?
What makes them better than just any crystal?
Right.
Well, for one thing, you can't control it, and number two, it has the ability even to control the weather. I've done a couple of interesting experiments, and number three, it has the capability of doing broadcast healing stronger than anything I've ever seen. It has the ability to charge up another crystal, which you take a regular quartz crystal and you put it against another regular quartz crystal. The strongest one will increase the other, but not by much, because they're pretty much the same.
Right.
But you take a skull crystal and you touch it against any crystal of any form, no matter what it is, and the skull will charge the little one.
Okay, so with the skull, it doesn't. You can't control the energy of the skull. Where with other crystals, there are certain crystals where you can kind of control the energy that the crystal itself has, but the skull's energy is not something that you can control. It's almost, or you.
Let me tell you a really quick story about it, because number one, I've been involved with quartz crystals since 1975. I mean daily, every day. And I've been researching and working with them. I can make a crystal almost stand up and dance, but I can't do that with a skull. I decided one time to measure the energy of rainbow skull and dowsing it, dowsing my dowsing rod. And so I set it out. I live in a country road. It's got a nice long stretch, and I set it out, and I doused the energy field, and I got a 100-foot energy field. I thought, well, that's really incredible, because most quartz will be about 3 or 4 feet. And as I'm standing there thinking about it, that I'm going to write this down, suddenly my dowsing rod reacted like an energy went right through it. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute, it's stronger than that. I better back up. So I backed up about another 100 paces, and that 300 yards, and I found that it stopped. And so I stood there thinking, well, this is really interesting. I've got to write this down, and the thing took off again. It kept backing me up till I got a quarter of a mile away, and it still was able to move on, and I stopped. Now,
wow.
the damn thing was playing with me. It was literally playing with me, because I could almost hear it laughing, saying, you want me to show you some energy? I'll show you energy. And I'm convinced that the energy was limitless, that there was no way that I could measure it. I couldn't do that, and had the same experience with the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Wow. Wow. That's very interesting. Yes.
So the answer is yes, it's time. All these skulls have come out, and suddenly the people of the world are really getting interested in it. Last year I was in England doing a tour for my healing work, and I went to Avebury, which is a place where they have a lot of UFO sightings, and
Stonehenge and stuff is in Avebury too, right?
Standing stones in big circles, and I actually took some pictures of rainbow in the middle of a crop circle. And I was maybe the fourth or fifth person to step in that circle. Even the guys around there who do this professionally, they didn't even know that it existed, and it's quite a major circle. So I'm traveling all over the place, collecting all types of energies I can to find out even more about the nature of the skulls that I have, because I know there's even more information that's available. It just takes time and effort to do it. And
are they connected? Are they connected though? That's my one final question, Stephen, and then I'll let you go. And thanks for having me. But I want to know if this connected, and I'll leave you on the line. I'm gonna plug my show Saturday nights. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Anytime, buddy.
And good luck on your show. I know that we're talking about subjects now that become appropriate. When I started back 30 years ago, it was just curiosity, and the whole idea of UFOs was weather balloons, and now we know differently. and we've got a whole big thing about the paradigm shift that's going on, it's happening all over the world.
So you think the paradigm shift is a major purpose of all this stuff coming to light right now?
I think that several things are happening with these crop circles. Number one, their way of communicating. Number two, their way of creating an energy effect, which I think is affecting the consciousness of the world. That's my reading on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating. Oh, well, Dale, I'm actually on the Sci-Fi Channel right now, and they're playing a old Indiana Jones movie. So it looks like this
on the East Coast.
They started with us
right now, and
on the East Coast.
I'm on the East Coast, and they're
9 o'clock.
Right now.
Well, it's supposed to be 9 p.m. Eastern time, which would then make it 6 p.m. our time. But I've been stuck on a telephone talking to people on the radio, so I haven't been looking at my television. But listen, I'm enjoying this, guys, so don't worry about it.
Yes.
My wife is taping it from now till the next 3 hours, so when it comes on, she's going to get it no matter what.
Great. We want to make sure you don't miss out on that. Well, you also do other types of crystals. Also, you also work with just regular crystals, like we're referring to, like the Lumarian seed crystal and other crystals, or is it just mainly you work with the skulls?
Well, you have to understand, I started off working on crystals back in 1975, and I didn't get seriously into skull work until 1985, 10 years later when I started working on the Mitchell-Hedges skull. Okay, so my major focus has been to develop an energy healing system I call crystallotherapy and take it around the world, teaching it to people, because we can do things like I mentioned, reduce physical pain in 10 to 15 minutes, accelerate all types of healing. My organization even has a provider number for CEUs for nurses, but I travel all over the world going to major conferences really on healing, demonstrating what I do.
And where are you located? Could you let the people know where you're located at? Not too much detail, just what state?
I live in California. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, it does. Yes, that's where I'm coming from too.
I live in the Bay Area. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, about an hour from San Francisco, in the area called the East Bay, maybe about 10, 12 miles from the city of Fremont. In a very tiny little city, which I'll just leave that off, although I'll give it to somebody who emails it. But they don't really want a whole bunch of people come storming in saying, "Hey, show us your skull business." I don't show the skull from my home. I take it occasionally to major conferences. I'll be going to one in England in June, and I'll be showing it, plus a whole slideshow presentation of images I found inside it, and the ability for people to come and bring their stones and be charged by the skull. So that's part of what I do. But like I said, I don't have people coming to my home and showing it because that's just too awkward.
Yes, we definitely put that out there for the people so they don't come showing up at your door.
But you can get a picture if you want a picture of an ancient skull. I will send you one, no charge. And if you want to have an energized little crystal skull, they're $50 plus shipping. So wherever you are, that's what it would cost you. If you want to do that, I also do that.
Okay. Well, as for the Anna Mitchell Hedges skull, or the I guess that would be the main one you referred to, or the Nick Nocerino skull. So you actually held your ancient skulls next to those. Did you get a chance to ever do that?
Well, just recently when we did the documentary, 3 of my ancient skulls were with the Mitchell-Hedges skull.
Okay. So they did come into contact with each other then?
Absolutely. And I even set them up the 3 in a triangulation with the Mitchell-Hedges skull in the center, and did a little mental activation, and the whole room got kind of energized really quick.
Amazing.
I don't know if the camera picked any of that up, or if I know the guys were saying, well, we can feel something.
Well, we talk a lot about the star seeds and the crystalline children. Is there any correlation with these crystal skulls and the crystalline children that are coming out in abundance now?
Well, yeah, there is not a direct connection, I don't think, but it's the times. Okay, isn't it intriguing that the indigo children, the crystal children, are coming out at the same general time as the skulls are emerging, when the skulls have been just whispers in mythology for a couple thousand years maybe, kept only by ancient and mystery groups and special priesthoods, the only ones that have been active with them. Suddenly they're coming out in numbers that have never been on this planet before. And when I asked about that to the skulls, they said, we're coming here to aid in raising the vibration of the human people so that they can match the changing vibration of the earth itself.
Wow. And I would guess that these crystal skulls are vibrating at a very high vibration rate, right?
Well, boy, that's my experience. I will tell you this much. You even watch this crystal skull slideshow, and a lot of people have dreams for a long, long time afterwards. And if you get one of these, I'll tell you, getting an energized crystal skull is an interesting experience too.
Wow, and I can't wait till I get mine in the mail.
I don't know what's going to happen to you when it happens, but I'll be interested to know if you keep a little journal.
I definitely will keep a journal and email you whatever takes place with these skulls, because I'm actually very happy to be getting them. But we had a great question in the chat from White Lotus Star. She was referring to that she leaves her skulls under her pillow at night when she's ready to get into the dream state. Have you ever done that with the skulls?
To my regret, yes.
And yes, what was the regret?
Well, the damn thing kept me in my dream state, dreaming heavy all night long, and I got up the next day and I just couldn't hardly work or do anything. I was still in that dream state. So I thought to myself, this is really not what I want to do. I don't want to get this thing to take me so deep that I can't get back out of it.
Wow. So it really sounds like it was sucking your energy from you or something in that matter.
No, they weren't. What they were doing is they were overloading me.
Overloading.
They're giving me too much information.
Oh, wow, man. Wow. Well, could you explain to the listeners what other esoteric research are you actually studying at the moment, and what else, what other fields are you into besides just the crystal skulls? Because I know you do a lot of other things.
Well, you have to understand that I've been involved in the nature of human consciousness. I've been intrigued by what telepathy does. How is it possible to do distant healing, and if it is possible, what are the principles of it? Can you come up with a theoretical structure? I was intrigued because I had a very good system of physical healing, and I found out that wasn't working for everybody, and the ones it didn't work on invariably were people with heavy emotional problems. So I went back to the ground zero again and started asking about emotions, and they gave me a whole thing, the science of emotions, as against, say, the psychology of emotions. And so that developed a whole system of emotional therapy to dissolve any negative emotion memory stored in your mind, even from childhood, even major traumas, can be completely eliminated in less than an hour, permanently.
Wow. So it definitely sounds like you're into either the Buddhist or the Hinduism background. Are you into that? Because it really sounds like you're into the mysticism and the esotericism.
I'm an elder in a Spirit Horse Medicine Society. Medicine means spiritual. Medicine in those days meant anything having to do with both physical, emotional, and mental processes, as well as spiritual. So the thing is, I have done a major study of all religions, wondering, do we even need them? I was interviewed by Hinduism Today magazine when they said, why is it Americans are so into using Hindu terminology such as chakras,
Namaste, and yes.
Mantras, mandalas.
Yes.
And they don't want to become Hindus. And I said, oh, that's easy. We don't like religion.
Exactly. Yes, that's a good point to put out.
And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it's because the major purpose of all religion is to continue to perpetuate the religion. And someplace down the line, maybe fifth, sixth, or seventh down the line, they're interested in helping you elevate your spirituality. And I said, all religion should have one purpose in life, and that's to put themselves out of business. And he said, what?
Exactly.
I said, well, if you teach me how to talk directly to God, I don't need you, and then you can get out and take an honest job.
Exactly. And that's what the ancient text states, that we must have a personal relationship with the Creator.
Well, exactly. Well, it's simple with me, and because I'm ascended from the Cherokee tribe, and my medicine society is based on the teachings of a medicine woman. And what we really think is spirits everywhere, and we can talk directly to it, and it can be done either through the representation of plants, animals, or people, or it can be through angels, archangels, masters. What's the limit? And then you start looking into quantum physics, and you find out, well, all of that business of telepathy and people speaking in different frequency dimensions, all that stuff is in physics. Now,
exactly.
Modern physics now is coming around to the metaphysics. It's starting to meet me in place. So
yeah, we talk a lot about quantum physics. We talk a lot about quantum physics here.
We're getting to the point where we are going to start merging physics and metaphysics together, and I think that's excellent.
Yes, indeed.
Does that correlate with the oneness that we all know of?
Well,
is that what's really taking place right now?
Well, if you consider that everything is a form of energy, even physics says that, everything breaks down into a little flicker of light.
Yes.
And you consider that, you think, okay, well then everything is just vibrating at a different frequency, and it doesn't matter if it's walking on 2 legs or 4 legs or growing out of the ground. It has consciousness, it has energy, has awareness. It may be a different kind of awareness, like somebody else speaks a different language than me, but so what? Awareness is still awareness, and everything is alive, and everything has life in it. If you honor and respect it like the Native American traditions teach, in fact, all the indigenous tribes around the world teach the same thing. Honor the mother, the earth itself, and all the things that walk and fly and crawl, and the creepy crawlies and the plants and animals. Everything is to be honored because it's all part of the same thing, which is called spirit.
That's a perfect way to put it.
How did you get me preaching there? I didn't intend to do that.
Well, we asked that perspective of all our listeners because this is a very spiritual show right here. We being into the paranormal, we believe that the paranormal definitely has to do with the soul and the realms of the outer limits and the universes, the multiverses, you know. So it's all attached, like you were stating, that it's all part of the same piece of the Creator, as we say here. But I noticed you mentioned the mandalas. Can you mention your research in the mandalas and the power within the mandalas?
Well, I didn't start off studying mandalas such as they have in the Hindus or the Buddhists. What happened is that, and you have to understand that all of my material that comes from me comes through my inner teachers who've been training me all this time. And the only difference between me and anybody else who channels information is I verify it and make it work physically. Well, at one time when I first started doing this work, I wanted to have a logo that was uniquely my own, that anybody would look at it would know immediately this is Dale Walker stuff. And so I had a limited picture in my mind. I couldn't really get it clear. I talked to one of my students who was a graphics artist, and we worked together for several weeks bouncing ideas back and forth until finally she came up with the picture that I'd seen in my mind. And then from there I took it and decided I wanted to find out what would be the colors that would be appropriate for it. And so I had an interesting little session with my children where we sat and colored with color pens. And we came up with the colors I actually saw into it. So I finally ended up with a design that was what I wanted. And I decided to put that on my first book, the Crystal Book, and it's in the center of it right now. It's called a Crystal Mandala. And what it really is 5 sets of hexagonal crystal shapes. There's 5 sets of 6 crystals in sequences running around in a large circle, and I didn't know there was anything special except I loved the design. I put it on the book, and one day I was standing with the book in my hand. I placed my hand accidentally on the front of it, and suddenly I felt this heat running up my arm. I looked down and I realized I put my hand over the mandala, and I just couldn't understand that because I'd never heard of a design that created an energy field, unless maybe it was, had electricity into it or magnetism or something, but it had nothing but just the image. And so I took that and I took a couple of copies and I put it back to back, began to experiment with it, and I found out that it had an energy field, exactly the same kind of energy a pyramid has, but amplified about 10, 15 times more. And so I began to play with it. I found out I could charge the body, I could charge water, I could charge food, I could even charge wine in a bottle, and would change the taste of the wine.
All to the mandala.
Yeah, this is just from a design, bear in mind. But it's a very specific, what is called a crystal design, a crystal mandala, and I asked my inner teachers about it. They said this is the basic design in the 4th dimension of all crystals in the world. All hexagonal crystals, not about all, mainly quartz, but all hexagonal crystals that are 6-sided. And that this represented that the energy of the universe could come through this design, like calling it like a gateway.
Wow.
Well, it gets intriguing because you can use it to charge anything you want, but I like the fact that I can use it for healing, and I use it for distant healing.
That would be probably the best way of using it, correct?
Well, it's certainly a way I like, because I like to do distant healing, and I get a lot of people asking for my help to do that. So what I do is I place them between 2 of these major mandalas. They come in many different, several different, increasingly complex designs. One of the beginning design has 3 different sizes. One about 1 inch, 3 inch, and 6 inches, and then from there you jump into a thing called a mega design, which goes even much more powerful and combines them together. But the bottom line is I like to do that because I can broadcast energy to as many as 10 people at one time.
Oh, amazing. Wow, that's a lot of healing, actually.
Well, tell anybody out there who's interested in knowing more about it, go to my website, and if they don't have enough information about mandalas there, then they can email me, and I'll be happy to send them something.
Okay. Well, the mandalas, that definitely deals with the sacred geometry, correct?
Yeah, you're speaking knowing very well you're going to get some, don't you?
Yes. That's why I'm definitely researching them right now.
Yourself.
Yes. I actually was able to be blessed by Dale, and he sent me a few of the mandalas also, so I can't wait to get those and see what type of powers I can basically try to take from them. But I know there's a lot of spiritual background behind the mandalas. Is there any research that you could refer the people to where they can maybe read this in a book somewhere to do further research on it?
My particular mandala?
Oh, no, just the mandalas in general.
Oh, mandalas in general. Go to Google and Google the word mandala, M-A-N-D-A-L-A. You're going to get a bunch of stuff.
There's no particular books that you might have that you've studied that you can share with?
Well, please understand, I didn't start out studying mandalas. What I did is I had a statement. I wanted to get a design. They gave me the design. Then they did something they do quite often, in that they hid something inside it, that there's a lot more to this than just a design for a logo. They do that to me all the time. They give me something for one simple purpose, and I find out it's the background of a whole science. Mm-hmm. So I have not studied mandalas because I don't have any particular need to. But if you want to study it, the Hindus and the Buddhists are fantastic with it.
Okay, so that would be the people to go to for the research on
that.
How about the crystal skulls? You would definitely have to say Nick Nocerino's work, correct?
Yeah, but his work is not on the web anymore. There's a little bit with some of the other websites talk about his stuff and some interviews that were given by him. Far as I know, and I don't know this for a fact, but just from talking to people, I'm maybe the last person who's doing basic research and trying to understand the nature of these scientifically or pseudo-scientifically, since I'm not really a scientist. But I measure things, and I test things, and I try different combinations, and I work on theoretical structures, and in that, it's a scientific view. I want to learn the physics of how skulls work.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yes, you have to.
Well, that makes me different than most other people.
Yeah, and it gives it more credibility, of course, and that's what people want to see nowadays. As for your crystals and the miniature crystals that you will be selling, we'll give that a quick promotion. What's the actual difference that the people will be receiving with your skulls and other skulls people might be able to get online? Because I heard you mention there's a few differences.
Well, the major thing that's going to happen is you hold this in your hands and you're going to feel something run through your whole body.
Well, I also heard you mention the model also is pretty important. That it has to be under the correct model instead of just any skull, correct?
No. I've never really talked about the shape of the skull as mattering because I've got many different shaped skulls in my from something that's very, very different, like the Tsar skull, and I have another one called the Nefertiti skull that looks like an elongated skull like the Queen Nefertiti. I don't have any rules about the shape of skulls and making them because I don't make skulls. I just
you have somebody you have somebody make them for you, correct?
Yeah, basically, the skulls that I get come out of Brazil or China, and they are modeled after human skulls.
So would they be modeled after your exact ancient skulls that you possess, or are
they're just close. Nobody has taken and made cast copies of it and tried to carve exactly the same skull that I've got. I've not given anybody the permission to do that. I don't see any point to it because any skull can be used. It's carved in the shape of the skull. If it's then energized by an ancient skull, then it will have the capability of holding that energy and transferring it to the person who holds it.
Okay. Have you ever actually seen the Paris skull and the British Museum skull? Have you ever been able to come into contact with those and get to basically do your fine research on them?
I have not been to the Paris skull, but last year I went to the British Museum, took my rainbow skull with me, and placed it on top of the case that holds the British skull and took photographs of them.
Wow.
And I believe, I haven't done enough analysis under magnification yet, but I believe I was able to make some changes in the images that created some kind of images in the British skull. I think so. I'm not saying I've got it because I have been so inundated with this documentary and a bunch of other things I'm doing that's been put in the background because it's not that important to me. But I had that experience. In fact, I have photos of the British skull, and on top of the case, you see it. There's good old rainbow.
Amazing. Well, is there any other? What was that?
I'm really heavy into this stuff. You got to understand that.
Yes. We can tell.
Good. Okay. What else?
It's very fascinating. Have you ever been able to verify these other skulls that you came across and basically see any telltale signs if they were ancient or modern? Because I know that's a big factor going around.
Yeah, I have some very specific methods by which I can verify it. I'm not going to tell you that they're my own particular methods, but after all these years of working with them, I know that there are some particular properties of ancient skulls that I find in all the ancient skulls that I've experienced anyway. I haven't looked at all of them. I've actually worked with 28 different skulls. And,
28 different skulls.
Yeah,
wow.
That were not modern. But in working with these skulls, there are certain things that I see, certain things I feel, certain things I find out, certain properties about them that are particularly unique that tell me if it's ancient or if it's modern. So if you've got an ancient skull and you'd like to verify it, give me about an hour and I can tell you that if, in my opinion, it is ancient. And bear in mind, it's just my opinion because Lord knows we can't verify the age of skulls, period.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But you definitely want to go to somebody who's actually had their hands on a great amount of them like you have. So I would definitely suggest anybody who thinks they have one, please email Mr. Dale and see if he can verify that for you. But I've heard that some of these ancient skulls might have took up to 300 years to create just one of them. Have you ever delved into that?
That was a thing put out by an art curator who investigated the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull back in the 1960s, and he said, in his opinion, that the Mitchell Hedges skull was created by rubbing diamond dust or quartz dust, and that if that was true, that he felt that it was not done by the wheel, it was done because under magnification they couldn't find any marks of the wheel. And so he felt it was done by hand, and that if it was done by that method, it would have taken up to 300 man-years to create it.
Oh, my God.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Man, I don't have that kind of patience, I'll tell you something.
So, has there been any, I'd have to say, prehistoric skulls found of crystal?
Prehistoric? Say it again.
Like, has there ever been maybe like a skull of Homo erectus, or is there any skulls that are more ancient than just the humanoid skull?
That's interesting. Back in the 80s, there was a video made called Skull Trek. You might go on online and find a copy by somebody.
Skull Trek.
Skull Trek.
Okay.
I thought that was a terrible name, but what the hell?
Yeah.
At any rate, this is Chuck Charles or Chuck Pelton, P-E-L-T-O-N is the guy that put this out. And in that he took several crystal skulls and he had people psychometrizing the skulls. And in working with the things, the questions came up as about the excuse me, I've got something in my throat.
Oh, no problem.
I hate that. Repeat the question again to me.
Oh, I was sort of thrown off right there. What was the question that was asked, Mel, exactly?
Any prehistoric skulls, and he said there was something interesting about it.
Right, Homo erectus. Thank you.
Yes.
What he did is he did a thing with it, and as part of it, he had some pictures of ancient prehistoric skulls, and he saw something in one of them, and he took it and he overlaid it on my rainbow skull, and it was almost a perfect fit. Okay, the only thing is that particular bone skull was one of Homo erectus, who last walked on the earth about 1 million years ago.
Oh, my God.
Presents a couple of questions, and one of them is, number one, where did they get a model?
Exactly.
Was it from a bone? Well, there are only 5 known partial Homo erectus skulls. Now, there's no full skull, period. I think they have created one out of just imagination based on pieces they had. But was it done in, was it a modern skull at that time? Was it even 1 million years ago? Well, we don't know. We can't date the quartz. Well, even if we could date the quartz, we couldn't date the time it was created.
Man.
Two problems.
And not only that, but if it takes, with the quality of work that's done on it, it would just take, like you said, like 300 years if they did it by rubbing it, and it just amazes me. Just look at the size of the piece of quartz that these skulls are made from. It's not several pieces put together; it's one piece, right?
Here's another interesting thing. I'm going to give you one of the things I look for in an ancient skull. One of the little keys.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, with the exception of the Mitchell Hedges skull, none of them are perfectly clear and beautiful.
Mm.
They made it out of available skull based not on the looks, but based on the energy levels and the properties of the quartz.
Mm.
Now, today's modern skull carver wants to sell it. So what kind of a quartz is he going to make it out of?
The roughest quartz that it can.
It's going to be as pretty, as clear, as pretty, as many rainbows or whatever else he can get for it, because that's what's going to sell. But
exactly.
The Mitchell Hedges skull is the only exception I know where it was so clear, so optically clear. All the other skulls have flaws into them, and some of mine have serious flaws. Czar, for instance, it's just almost totally shadow or cloudy, and it's got miniature fractures all throughout the whole thing, little tiny ones. It's really poor quality quartz if you're thinking in terms of pretty. But my God, you see the picture of the thing and you think, oh my God, this is really incredible.
Amazing.
And the energy of it is very powerful.
Well, I've heard scientists say that from the larger skulls that are out there, that there's pretty much not even a size of crystal that they could find today to make that size of a skull, correct?
Oh, no, that isn't true.
Really?
I can tell you for a fact, right now, if you give me the money for it, I'll go get you a crystal that weighs 300 pounds and is about 4 foot around. And it's going to be clear inside.
Oh,
so
amazing.
You want to get the money to do it. I've been to Brazil, and I've been inside a storage garage, big, huge garage, and I sat down on one crystal that was actually a crystal plus a couple of pieces that came off the side of it, like a cluster. And
wow.
I reached my arm. I got a photograph of me trying to reach the ends of both parts of the crystal, and I couldn't reach the end.
And this was one solid piece of crystal, right?
One solid piece of crystal. And I saw them.
Now,
they put lights up against it. They take them out of the ground.
Wow.
There was a crystal from South Africa. Listen to me. There was a crystals from South Africa in a show at Tucson one year that weighed 13,000 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, that's where you can get them from.
Double terminated and smoky. Huge monstrous crystal. No, I don't know. I do know that the deeper you go, the bigger the crystals get. That's been proven by all the miners. I do know that that there are crystals big enough to make a skull that's probably bigger than you could carry. But what would be the point?
Exactly. Well, what I heard was that they needed 3 times the amount of the skull in order to create from, correct? Like,
well, that's probably true.
Yes, that's what I've read.
Well, it's like any kind of carving. You're gonna have to find the sweet spot inside the material that will get you what you want. You get a piece of marble and you carve a sculpture out of it. What you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to look at the design and fit it within the structure of the material, and accept where it's going to have to be chopped off to get the basic design you want. And it's the same thing with a skull. But they have crystal balls, for instance. I just recently saw a crystal ball that was about 2 foot in diameter.
Oh my God!
Wow.
I know a guy right now can get you a crystal. I know a guy right now can get you a crystal ball that's that big or pretty close to that big. And if he can get it that big, how much more difficult would it be to carve a ball into a skull?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I got a question. The people that carve these skulls, do they actually carve them with utensils or like a CNC machine?
Oh no, they use modern
wheels, correct? Yeah.
Of course. See, the only problem with that is that when you carve it, you have to be very careful. The quartz is hexagonal and it has 3 axes, call them the XYZ axes. On one of the axes, if you carve into that particular one, it builds up so much energy from the friction the piezoelectric energy builds up from the friction so much causes the quartz to shatter. So modern carvers will not go on that particular axis of the quartz. Now, the ancient skulls, and I know for a fact the Mitchell Hedges and the Shannara and probably Max, and I know that my skull, Rainbow, all are carved against the axis. And mine in particular was, I believe, was carved by hand because it's the only solid skull that has a hollowed out center in the bottom of it, like a cup. And in that center, if you run your hands over that area, you'll find that it's rough, that it's uneven. Okay, now, how do you make an uneven surface with a round wheel making a hollow round surface?
Good point. Good point.
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And it just shows that this most likely was made by hand because I can't imagine a machine that could do it and would leave it rough.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
That is just mind-blowing. Does your skulls have the moving mandibles?
No, only the Mitchell Hedges skull has that. However, there's a man, his name is Kirby Seid, S-E-I-D, who found a very particular beautiful piece of smoky quartz, and he found a carver in China that was able to carve out of it a skull with a detachable lower jaw mandible. And it's beautifully done. It's an exquisite piece of work. But it's the only one I know that's properly duplicated the removable jaw that's the human skull shape.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Well, we're coming down to the last 5 minutes, Dale. Please give out all your information, how people can contact you, any books you might have out. Give it all out for the people.
Okay. First of all, my website is crystalawareness.com. My email is my name, D-A-E-L Walker, @AOL.com. I will send to anyone who sends me a thing at least one picture of a skull, and if you ask particularly for Czar, I'll give you that. If you ask for Rainbow, I'll give you a copy of that. The only thing that makes Rainbow different is, unlike Czar, there are no pictures in Czar, but there's an awful lot of energy. But there are pictures in Rainbow.
All right.
And if you want the little baby skulls, the little 2-inch plus skulls that have been energized for actually better than a month, then they're available. They'll cost you $50 plus the shipping wherever you are. I ship them usually by priority mail post. And I do also take credit cards for it. I have a business that handles this. So if they're interested, they can certainly get it. I have 2 books that are now out of print, and I'm writing 3 more. I'm an Aquarian. I can't just write one book at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand. I'm the same way.
But my 2 books, one was called the Crystal Book, and the other called the Crystal Healing Book. One is a general topical book about quartz crystals, and the other is a specific healing system using 2 quartz crystals. Either of those books, I still have maybe a couple hundred of them left in my storage. That's available if people are interested. If you want to just communicate with me, use my email address. But bear in mind, I'm going to get a lot of mail now, a lot more. I'm getting so much now, it's really a lot to do. And I will try to answer you, but it may take a couple days.
Okay, great. Well, do you have any last words you want to leave the people with? Maybe on the information, or just anything you want to just leave the show with? Well,
if you're really interested in the skulls, I suggest you get one. Whether you get it from me or get it from somebody else, it doesn't really matter. Except, as I said, mine is different and it's been charged by the ancient ones. But if you're really interested, get it or take a photograph, meditate with it, put it underneath your pillow, see what happens. If you're interested in healing, quartz crystals are one of the best power tools around. I've got a system called crystallotherapy, which is now being taught in a dozen countries. And I will be doing workshops in different areas. If they're interested in that, I'll put up a calendar pretty quick telling me what will be happening. 2008 is already over.
If people wanted to do some broadcast healing from Dale, can you do that through email or a phone number? How do you go about doing that? Is that just strictly at conferences and whatnot?
Well, as it stands right now, I would have to say, unless this is an absolute emergency, I wouldn't do it because I'm already up to my eyeballs in the work I'm doing, including the healing. And,
yes.
And I get on a radio show like this, and it just people start coming from all over. If I get on a television show, it's even worse because they'll beam that across into different countries, and I'm getting them all the way from Romania and Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and my goodness.
Well, we
right
really appreciate you being on the show.
Okay, so on the distant healing thing, I'd say hold off for a little bit because I'm really got as much as I can handle at the time.
So Dale's pretty inundated right now, but I'm sure you could call or try to contact him in the future if you need that emergency crystal healing, because I would definitely refer it to anybody because I believe in it myself. So
all right, here's the thing I will offer to people. If they're interested, I have a kit that I can put together for them for people can do their own distant healing. It's quite effective. The whole package of the kit runs about $175. Because it includes a Wheel of Life pendant, which when they're not using it, they can wear it for protection and for energizing your immune system. And it includes a couple of mandalas that allow you to do this from a distance 24 hours a day. If people are interested, once again, do the email, dalewalker@aol.com. I'm out of the skulls, like accessing graphics in a computer.
Oh, wow. So, where exactly was the first skull found? How was that found by accident, or?
Oh, the Mitchell Hedges skull may not be the first skull, but it is the most famous skull of all, and it was found in Belize in the early 1920s by Anna Mitchell Hedges on an archaeological dig site.
So it was it in ruins, or was it just in the ground?
Yeah, it was a Mayan temple site. There were several acres in size, and this was undertaken. It was a series of temple ruins that was being investigated by Dr. Frank Mitchell Hedges, her father.
Huh. How many skulls have been found up to this date? I guess you could say how many authentic skulls, because I'm sure that there's replicas have been made.
Well, I have for some time together with Nick, we decided to break the skulls down into different categories. The first one would be modern skulls, and that would be skulls that have been carved in this modern time, in the past, let's say 30 or 40 years. Then there are older skulls which are up to 1,000 years old, and there are ancient skulls which are many thousands of years old.
Yeah, the Mitchell Hedges skull, how old is that one?
Oh boy, that's a good question. In the first place, let's make something very clear. Scientifically, we cannot date quartz.
Yeah.
Because
and all these are made of some form of quartz because you have to have carbon-14 to count the radioactivity decay rate in it, and there is no carbon in quartz.
There's basically no organic form within this crystal is what it is.
None. And
amazing.
So the only way that we have been able to come up with anything as an idea is to go to various different psychics and intuitives and ask them the same question.
Could you please give the audience maybe a quick bio, and then we can start into the conversation of the crystal skulls?
Really quick, I'm the director of the Crystal Awareness Institute. Began in 1975 working with crystals and energy and healing. I have been doing so now for over 30 years, and I've traveled in 14 different countries teaching different energy healing techniques that I've developed. And the side effect is I've been researching in ancient crystal skulls since 1985.
85, wow.
That's quite
wow. Yes, it is. I didn't even know that the crystal skulls existed maybe till maybe 5 years ago. So that's a long time researching this. On that note, basically, what got you into the skulls originally, and what was the main reason for you to dedicate, a lot of your time to this?
Pure curiosity. First, answer the first question is that my teacher, Nick Nocerino, was the one who had the massive interest in crystal skulls since he was a child, and he got me interested after he brought in a skull called a Mayan skull, and I was not able to go to it, but he showed me some pictures, and I was intrigued. And then we had an opportunity to set up a team to go to Canada to Anna Mitchell-Hedges' home and study the Mitchell-Hedges skull, and that I did in 1985, and both he and I returned in 86 and 87 to do separate research processes.
Wow. So for people that don't know, we would have to say Nick Nocerino is probably the top guy in this field, correct?
I would consider him to be the foremost crystal skull researcher, not only in time, but in his ability to actually help develop the codes that could actually access the skulls and get information in the form of pictures and other sensory data to come before, and we're not able to account for by any other method other than the fact that we simply photograph them.
Huh. Well, we have a question in the chat room from Kathy. She says, I know this might sound like a silly question, but with all he has learned from the skulls, has he found out, let me see, I got to scroll this. Can you see that better, Melchizedek? Because I can't actually scroll right now. Her question on the chat.
I can't see the last word. I think it says what the skull was chosen for the icon of the carvings.
Okay, there we go.
The icon of what?
Of the carvings. I'm not quite exactly sure what she's trying to say there.
I'm not sure. In fact, let's ask her to go back to the chat room and say this again in a little more clear way, because I'm not quite sure what she means about the carvings.
Well, this brings me to an interesting point here. When you talk about there's information or images on this, like in the Stargate shows and stuff like that, their computers are controlled by what looks like motherboards that are like crystal or something. So do you think maybe this was used in some kind of ancient computer or extraterrestrial computer, or it may have more information than just images?
I think, quite frankly, that these were used as record keepers.
Strictly.
More than, I believe we are pretty sure that these things even today can tap into your memory banks and record every memory of everything that's ever happened in your whole life.
Almost like cellular memory, almost?
Almost like cellular memory. In fact, if you consider that if it does store images on bands of light, and we're pretty sure that it does, then the capacity is infinite because it's 3D.
Wow. And Thea writes, why is it a skull question she's asking, perhaps? Maybe it's the fact that the
why
brain
did they carve it the shape of the skull?
Memory.
Yeah, but she's basically asking why did they choose the skull rather than a tree or a monkey, etc.?
Well, in the ancient times, the skull was recognized as being a residence of knowledge from the individual who thought within it. In fact, even today, the Tibetans, when they have a very great Rinpoche, which is like a cardinal, very honored, ancient, sacred, holy man, when he died, they would take his skull and they would cleanse it and ritually work with it, even put gold around it, and use it with a special liquid. His leading assistant or apprentice would drink from it with the idea that his information was stored in the brain, was also in the crystalline structure of the bones of the skull, and that this information then could be transferred back into the liquid and then taken in by the individual.
I have done some research on that before.
Amazing. Well, Dale, we actually have a lot of questions for you. We're going to try to just shoot them out and basically give us your best answer. It doesn't matter how long it'll take, just because the listeners, they definitely want to hear the details and they tune in. So what was your question now?
I had kind of a comment right quick. Wasn't it Edgar Casey that said something about something will be found about information or regarding Atlantis or something like that? And you say these skulls hold information and images, right?
Yes.
Could that
Edgar
connection
Casey said
kind of be made?
That from Atlantis that they kept records, what they call in an area they call the Hall of Records, and that these would be, well, they would be records of Atlantis.
Okay.
The Akashic records, bear in mind, the Akashic records are the full-time, real-time record of everything you do in a whole life.
It's like a conscious record or something like that, right?
It's definitely a record that can be tapped into. There are Akashic readers that do that, but from what I remember of the Casey material, without telling them the answer somebody else gave us, and then we use if we get 3 or 4 people saying the same thing, there's a pretty good chance that might be it. And in all cases, I don't guess it really matters how old a skull is. What counts is what can it do.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
That was actually going to be my next question. You said something about what can be read from the skulls?
We were able, starting with the Mitchell Hedges skull, and since that time I have 2 other skulls that have done the same thing. We've been able to activate the skull to the point where images have appeared that were strong enough that we could actually photograph them.
Huh. So essentially, we are basically talking about a crystal skull as we know, or not a crystal skull, but like what the mystics use as a crystal ball, where they're able to see into this crystal.
Except that what you're describing is a process called crystal gazing or scrying, in which an individual clairvoyantly sees visions which are actually in his head but are projected by his eyes into the shiny surface. But that's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about actually photographing the quartz skull itself, the images that are in there that were so visible we could actually photograph them.
Oh, my God.
So it's almost like a EVP, but with the photography.
Well, exactly. What you're really looking at is something that must be similar to an ancient way of producing something like a computer storage unit. Because we're getting the Mitchell Hedges skull was one of the first ones that we were able to do this, and that was dramatic in that here's a piece of quartz that's almost totally clear. In fact, it was so clear that it had been put into a bucket of water, it would just simply disappear because there's nothing internal you could see.
And that's
from that,
unusual
we were able
for quartz, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because that's a very high quality, what is called optical quartz. And it's a beautiful skull, by the way. But what we were able to do through various different methods, we were able to activate the skull so that pictures appeared that weren't there before.